Chapter 25 of Psychopomp Drive. Written by Janeen Leese-Taylor. Read aloud by SkyAsimaru. Chapter 25 The Final Lament. Leaving Arsenio behind, Finley stepped through the final door, expecting fanfare. Instead, he found a chamber illuminated on each side by startlingly blue flames, silent as a grave. Vast shadows covered the floors, shifting like living things as the fires danced. The walls around him were crafted with hundreds of skulls, human and animal alike, their eyeless sockets watching him blindly as he walked. Despite the lack of company, he still felt as though he were in a crowded room, eyes prickling his skin under his dark coat. At the very end of the chamber, at the top of a wide set of stone stairs, was a throne. Ornate and lined with silver, the throne rose from atop a pile of discarded bones. On it sat the form of a man. He was broad-shouldered and large, a thick black beard taking up residence on the lower half of his face, and tipped with living flames that burned brightly in the dim and chased shadows up the curve of his nose and eyes. His hair was long and graying, curling around his face and bare shoulders. A sheet was draped across his chest and lay folded in his lap, clearly displaying the meaty thighs and muscular calves beneath. Atop his head rested a crown, crafted from a ram's hollowed-out skull. He did not rise as Finley expected him to when he entered, instead silently watching the young Amarini as he approached. Finley felt like he was in the presence of royalty as he looked up at the man. He loomed over everything from his raised platform. Hades' eyes glowed with blue light as the cat spirit drew nearer, and Finley stopped at the bottom of the steps, gazing up at him. For the first time since he could remember, he felt totally and utterly at a loss for what to do next.
Is this part of the test? Finley wondered. Does he want me to...
The man watched him wordlessly, and Finley noted that there was an expectant expression on his face, not quite knowing if spirit rulers worked the same way as living ones did. Finley lowered himself to the ground and kneeled before him, allowing his head to drop forward. His cat-like ears bent down to either side of his face, his tail tucked neatly behind him. The man above him chuckled low in his throat, shifting his position to lean forward and cupping his hands.
7 visitors I have had today, and you, my friend, are the first one to bow, he remarked, voice deep and booming as a cave's echo. Why is that? It just seemed like the right thing to do, Finley replied, feeling suddenly awkward. The man's gaze on top of his head felt like a lead weight, pushing him down. It felt oppressive, all-consuming.
The Amarini's ears perked up at the sound of the man rising from the throne, and he listened for his footfalls as he approached. A pair of sandals appeared under his line of sight, and he held back a laugh as the god playfully wriggled his exposed toes.
"You may stand, Finley,"
the man said.
"He already knows my name?"
Finley observed. He watched him as he rose, surprised to see such a gentle face on the king of the dead. The tight curls framed his high cheekbones, and an impressive mustache took up residence above his wide smile, well-groomed and blended in with the rest of his beard. He appeared as an older man, in his 50s or 60s, judging by the lines under his eyes and along his mouth. His dark eyebrows were expressive in how they raised towards the ceiling when he appraised the younger spirit, and Finley felt himself flush when the man reached out and grasped his chin, tilting his face upwards.
"I didn't recognize you at first,"
the god noted, twisting his face one way and then the other.
"The ears and hair color are new."
The Amarini regarded him with astonishment.
"So you really do know me?"
Hades grinned.
"You seem surprised. I know all the living,"
he chuckled, turning back to face his chair. He waved a hand, and a book lifted from a shelf nearby, rushing to fill his empty palm.
"Do you know what this is, Finley?"
Finley shook his head.
"No, sir."
Hades groaned softly as he took a seat on his throne again, peeling open the pages of the large leather-bound tome on his lap lackadaisically.
"This is the original Book of the Dead."
Finley recalled his primary school teacher, Mr. Farthing, mentioning this particular book more than once. An ancient Egyptian funerary custom, supposedly kept by a priest called Imhotep, who was a servant of the hawk-headed god Horus. A copy of it was written on papyrus and placed inside the coffin or the burial chamber with the deceased. A spell book, for lack of a better name, used to help the dead through the judgment ritual, the duat, and into the field of reeds, the Egyptian version of the afterlife.
"The original?"
Finley questioned.
"Known as the coffin text,"
Hades explained, his alto voice deep and rumbling in the vacant chamber.
"This copy of the book contains not only the spells to grant lost souls passage to the field of reeds, but also lists the names of every person on earth."
Finley frowned.
That book doesn't seem nearly big enough for that."
The god laughed softly.
"No, you are right. It does not."
He continued leafing through the pages slowly, fingers grasping each corner and folding it into place.
"The coffin text only contains the names of those who are still alive, which is why I was surprised to find you here with me when your name is so clearly still inside this book."
The words rang out in the empty chamber and settled on Finley's shoulders like a ton weight. his tail wrapped around the bottom of his trousers nervously, caressing the spot near his ankle.
That doesn't seem right,"
he noted.
"No," Hades agreed. "It does not."
He closed the book and waved a hand, returning it to the shelf from whence it came with a soft thud. He leaned forward in his chair, bracing his head with one hand as he frowned in the other man's direction.
"You and the other Amorini are a strange conundrum," he commented. "In all my years serving this kingdom, I have never found spirits that so easily disregard its rules."
An apology rested in Finley's mouth, as thick as dried bread on a thirsty man's tongue. It was an obstacle, something that sealed up the rest of his words. He tried to swallow it down, but his throat had suddenly closed up.
"Tell me, Finley Evans, what do you know of the final trial that awaits you?"
he asked.
"Nothing,"
the smaller spirit answered him.
"Until we got here, most of us didn't even know the trials existed." "Then let me provide you with some information,"
the king said, getting to his feet and walking towards him from the steps again.
"The lament is an expression of grief. It's about releasing everything you have been holding in your heart since you died, about letting go of the living world and embracing the world of the dead as one of its denizens."
His sandals made a soft sound when they touched the polished stone floors, followed by the drag of his sheet as it followed behind him like a bridal train. He reached out with both hands and placed them on Finley's shoulders, securing him in place. Finley didn't want to look at him, but felt compelled to, by something inside himself that he couldn't quite understand. He could sense the energy moving between them, like a current of electricity, buzzing and crackling beneath the surface of his skin. Static jumped along the spaces between his hairs, vibrating every cell within his doll and his mind.
"Close your eyes,"
the god commanded.
"What are you going to do?"
Finley questioned, unable to look away from the spirit's face. His voice shook from within, making him sound as weak and small as a lost child, seeking out a parent.
"I am going to free you from what binds you,"
Hades explained.
"Now, please, close your eyes."
This time, Finley did as he was told, closing his eyes and sinking into the blackness behind his eyelids. He focused on that feeling within himself, sensing the pulses of the god's magic as it surrounded him like a mother's embrace. Before him, images began to materialize in the darkness. The loss of his father when he was 9, standing at the man's funeral with a pure white lily pressed against his tiny suit jacket. Finding his cat at the side of the road, wrapping her in a blanket and committing her to the ground in his parents' back garden. The time a young man had taken him by surprise and kissed him at a club. How he had shoved him back and seen the hurt and confusion in his eyes. Lying on a bench in the Duchess of Chester Park, the remnants of a night out and a takeaway lying across the path beside him. The heavy weight of the shame and guilt filling his gut and throat with bile. Grief, pain, regret, it all tasted the same, sour and lingering. The emotions at once filled his body with sensation and then pulled away, drifting off into the nothingness like they never were. He felt tears bubbling up from somewhere inside himself, spilling down his cheeks and out of his control. Each memory was as clear as if it was happening right now in front of him, and he both longed to reach out and to pull away from them. The two halves of his mind were at war. He trembled despite himself, feeling powerless in the god's grip.
I don't know if I can do this, he admitted. It's all right, Hades soothed. None of that matters anymore. Just let it go. No one will remember you for these things.
But it still hurts, Finley said. All of it hurts. He squeezed his eyes tighter, as if in an attempt to make the images clearer. I still miss my dad. I want to apologize to that guy who tried to kiss me. I want to keep Socks inside where the cars can't reach her.
Those things have already been done, the god continued, his voice like the low growl of an engine coming to life. There is nothing you can do to change them or take them back.
Fresh tears ran down his face. I wasn't a good person.
We all have regrets, Finley Evans.
Hades comforted him, his hands squeezing his shoulders as a grounding point.
But they cannot exist with you beyond the realm of the living. You are dead now. These memories need to be buried with you.
The Amarini sniffed, opening and closing his hands.
Please,
he whispered.
Please show me how to let go.
Finley startled when he felt the god's hands move to take his own, encompassing them completely in his much larger grip.
Detach each memory from the emotion it brings up. The memories are free to remain, like pictures in a photo album, but the sensations that accompany them must be left behind.
Finley nodded, pulling his lower lip into his mouth, chewing on it as he held back the rising tide within his chest and throat.
You could not have known Socks would wander onto that road,
the god of the underworld continued calmly.
Nor could you have prevented your father's death. You were 9 years old, not a medical professional. The stranger who tried to kiss you thought you were homophobic, but you were just startled. A miscommunication, never intended to cause pain.
Finley watched each of the memories appear before him and vanish again. The pain of seeing them gradually began to lessen, until the pictures were bittersweet, their images just another part of the living tapestry that existed within himself, parts of what made him the person that he was. The pressure in his throat slowly lessened until it was gone entirely, as though the noose that had been tightening around his neck had finally been pulled away.
"Open your eyes, Finley,"
Hades instructed. The Amarini did as he was told, and was surprised to see the god extending a small glass container in his direction. He brought his hands up to take it, studying the familiar rounded shape of it with a furrowed brow.
This is a holding container,"
he noted, glancing up at the god's face above him.
"We use these to catch hollows that can't be exorcised." "Precisely,"
Hades replied, the flames on his chin flickering when he smiled.
"Those emotions you are feeling, that is what makes a spirit vulnerable to the hollows. What creates them, feeds them, changes them."
He twisted the cap from the top of the bottle and pulled back again.
"Lament and be free of your demons, Finley. Give them no more room in your soul."
Finley focused on the bottle, eyes traveling to the opening at the top. He thought of each of those memories and the pain they once invoked, and exhaled, releasing the tight grip he hadn't even realized he had been holding on them. Dark liquid began to bubble up to the surface of his skin, the individual globules climbing out from within his cells and making their way to the glass container. One by one, the hollows disappeared inside. Smoke spilled from his chest, black and acrid, and swirled around the top of the bottle before finally disappearing inside. When no more hollows emerged, Hades reached up and sealed the cap again. His body felt different, strangely buoyant, as if something heavy had been removed. Hades took the glass jar from his hands and held it up to the light, studying the black mass inside.
"It always amazes me how small they appear once they have been captured,"
he mused.
"And yet the pain they cause feels so very great."
"I feel—" Finley started. He paused, trying to find the words.
"Weightless?"
the god next to him supplied. The Amarini nodded, his ears straightening on his head again.
"Now you are ready to enter the kingdom of the dead,"
Hades said, with a flourish of his chiton, a bright smile on his face that he would never have expected from the ruler of the underworld.
"Congratulations, Finley Evans, and welcome to the other side."
To be continued in Chapter 26.